Welcome to Secrets for an Inspirational Life with Mimi Novic, the place where every heart tells its story. Whether it's inspiration, courage or hope you need, you've come to the right place. Sit back and enjoy the journey with us. Subscribe below to be sure you don't miss future episodes.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? I hope that you are well. I hope that you are enjoying beautiful moments regardless of what is happening in the world. I hope that you are looking with the eyes of hope, with the eyes of inspiration, and with the eyes of love. Because that is all that matters in the end, is how deeply did we love one another? And people always say to me that I look through rose-colored glasses. And you know what? Yes, I do. Because the world should be looked through rose-colored glasses. Because we are here but for a moment on this journey called life. And let us grab with both hands. Let us embrace life. Let us embrace each other. Let us give beauty and love and joy to each other. And let's make it easy. This life, let's make it easy for each other as much as we can. And with that in mind, I am absolutely delighted to welcome my guest today, who is Brian Isom, all the way from Alabama in the United States. Brian is a motivational speaker, actor, musician, and life coach. He served as a military veteran in the US Army for 17 years, and Brian's journey to enlightenment was catalysed by a near-death experience during the Iraq War. This pivotal moment redirected his path towards a higher calling, leading to the establishment of Brian Isom Consulting, where he now helps others find their pathways towards healing, self-love, and forgiveness. Brian is an Emmy Award-Winning producer and cinematographer, renowned for his unscripted contributions to esteemed court shows such as We the People with Gloria Allred and Relative Justice. Today, he shares his amazing journey. Welcome, dear Brian.
Thank you. Thank you, Mimi, for welcoming me. That was a beautiful introduction.
Oh,
Thank you
well
so much.
deserved. Oh, thank you,
so
Brian,
much.
for being here today. It's really a pleasure to have you here. And I always get excited for some reason. I don't know what that is, but whenever I talk to people from across the globe, as I said to you, I do a little dance, and I especially did an extra little dance that you were coming on today.
Oh, wow. That means a lot to me coming from my humble place of Alabama. Oh, thank you, Mimi.
A pleasure, a pleasure. Now, you do a lot of things. You've done a lot of things, and you've been through a lot. But I want to take you right back to the beginning. How did all of this start with your work? How did you begin in the army, to leaving the army, to having a near-death experience, to changing your life completely? Where did it all begin?
Wow. Well, it started as a child. It started as a child being inquisitive, questioning myself, questioning life, secretly questioning my mother, who sometimes didn't have the answers to the questions that I had. Asking God, I'm like, I know there's something more to this life than what I was seeing. I knew at a young age I had a gift. a gift of clairvoyance, but I didn't know what it was. And I know that everyone has it because we are all made in the image of the Creator in His essence, in totality. But I like to say that everybody operates in God mind, but not everybody knows how to utilize God mind to their benefit in the most positive way that serves humanity. So growing up as a child, I grew up around, my environment was very churchy. I mean, it's very strict. So to take us to the point to where I joined the Army, I joined the Army because I was 19 years old. 9/11 just had happened. And I felt in my 19-year-old being that I should do a service and go fight for our country. And I consider myself a young warrior at that time, at 19. And I recognized, looking back, that when you're young, if you don't have any type of direction, it depends on what type of environment you grow up in. But the environment that I grew up in, if you didn't join the Army or you didn't have a great job that could support a family if I were to get married, or if I had plans on going to college, that if you didn't have those plans, that you could easily get caught up into devious acts of negativity if you didn't have a plan. So at 19, my brother went to the Army and he graduated from basic training. And I went to his basic training and I was impressed at the order and balance that I saw that people of my age had. And I didn't know that humans could be controlled like that in a very robotic way. And I was like, wow, this is something that I want to do. To take my mind off being distracted in a negative route, I'll join the Army. And then joining the Army from there was a blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was in the Army for 5 years, 5 or 6 or 7, 8 years before I went to the war in Iraq. And I went, and here's the point I want to make. Everything in life that I did was my own choice. And sometimes people will look at people who joined the Army and who went to the war. They'll have a pity party for them. I want no pity party for what I'm about to go into, because I take responsibility for the choices that I made. I chose to go to Iraq because there were soldiers around me who were younger than me and who were of lesser rank, who had experienced near-death experiences, and who had experienced war. And I thought to myself that I haven't been, so how could I? And I was of a certain rank, and I was like, I should have that experience. I was telling myself I should have that experience. Being a supervisor over troops, I should be able to tell soldiers what it's like to go to war, and I should have that story for myself, and I didn't have it. And I felt, as a man, I felt incomplete. As a leader, I felt incomplete. And so I raised my hand and volunteered to go to Iraq. And when I went to Iraq, I knew the game of life and death was really at play. I know that life and death could happen at any given moment, but I knew I was really putting myself in harm's way for a lesson that catapulted me to a place of unconditional love. In 2009, I was in Iraq, finishing up my tour. It was 1-year tour. And at the end of this 1-year tour, we had made it without any incidences within our team. Up until the last month, we were hit with an IED bomb. And that changed my life forever. For the good. It changed my life for the good in a sense that I was able to take a negative and make it into a positive.
How?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
How were you able to do that?
I was able to, it was very difficult. It was very difficult, but it was, when I look back on it, it was not that difficult. What happened to me in Iraq shook my foundation. And when it shook my foundation, I pleaded out, I cried to the heavens. And I said, help me. I need help. I even cursed God. I says, hey, if you're real, I need help. Following my joy of excitement led me to the path of making a negative situation a positive. Upon coming home from Iraq, I was in a state of sadness, confusion, a lot of suicidal thoughts. My inner voice said, do what makes you happy. And I was like, I know it makes me happy. Going to California, being an actor, that makes me happy. To backtrack, let me back up right before I get into this next part of the story. Before I left Iraq, me and a team of soldiers, we sat around the table and we said, if we survive Iraq, this is what we're going to do. And everybody went around the table and they all said, if I survive Iraq, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do, I'm going to buy a house, or I'm going to go fishing, or everybody had their story of what they were going to do if they survived Iraq. When it came to me, I said, if I survive Iraq, I'm going to move to Hollywood, California, and I'm going to be on television. Now, sitting at home in Alabama, suicidal, confused, lost, I had this struggle within myself. Just left Iraq and survived it, and now I'm about to make another transition to another state, over 2,000 miles away, and that was it was a very difficult choice, because what I was leaving behind, my mother, who has 6 children, almost losing a son, is now, that son is saying now he's going to California. And my mother fought to keep me here, but being in Alabama was not conducive to my spiritual growth at that present moment in time. Listening to my intuition say, go to California. I moved to California, following my passion and following my joy. When I followed my joy in 2013, I found myself in the floor of my apartment, November 2013, looking for a sign from above. I stopped watching TV back in 2008. So I always had silence around me from 2008 up until I went to California. So when I sat in the floor of my apartment, November 2013, my receiver to receive that voice or to receive a download from source, I was ready for it. But I remember laying on the floor of my apartment And I was going to take a 6-month hibernation, and just not do anything. And a voice came through, and it says, if you don't take this time out to do some self-development, shame on you. This voice was loving. This voice was compassionate. It was aggressive, but it was stern. And from then on, I put the pedal to the metal, and every tool of enlightenment everything was guided to me effortlessly. All I had to do was listen and obey, follow my excitement. Because what I didn't like feeling depressed. I didn't like feeling like I didn't have the answers to the problems that I had mentally, spiritually, and physically. But in that voice that came through, in that transmission that came through, if you don't take this time out to do some self-development, shame on you. That led me to books. That led me to audio material. It led me to just do anything that made me happy. The first knowledge that I got was repetition of knowledge. That's how I'm going to program myself. That's how I'm going to take these negative thoughts and transmute them into positive. Oh. And then I read a book. And this book spoke about unconditional love to yourself, no judgment of any kind to yourself, and forgiveness to oneself. And I thought to myself, I think I do that. And I did some digging. I said, no, I don't think I unconditionally love myself. I don't think I had that practice. And when I really analyzed, I was operating on conditional love, a love that had conditions on it. That means I had to do something special in order to love myself. But when I didn't do anything special or that was a high achievement, then I didn't love myself. And then I realized I judged myself, and I had to realize, what definition of judgment do I have? I invalidated myself all the time because that's the environment that I came from. That's the operating system that I was operating on while I was stuck in a negative mindset. So I tried the opposite of judgment, which is no judgment of any kind to myself. I says, wow, no judgment of any kind to myself, and replace that with, what are you learning? You had an experience that was undesired. So what are you learning? Don't judge yourself. What are you learning? Take those lessons and apply them. And then the last one was to forgive myself from the past up until the present. For I was in ignorance for a huge part of my life. And now I'm no longer ignorant. I practice forgiveness to myself. I practice no judgment of any kind to myself. I practice unconditional love to myself in a repetitious manner, so much that it's now innate. It's a part of my being. And I don't have to worry about treating other people away, because I know how I treat myself. It's the golden rule. Treat others how you treat yourself. And I treat myself with unconditional love, no judgment of any kind, but learning and forgiveness, practicing until there's no breath in me.
Wow. Really. And the path of forgiveness. Is that the beginning of everything, do you think? To be able to forgive oneself, firstly, for all the things we did, for all the things we didn't do. Do you think that's the beginning of wisdom?
Yes. To forgive oneself is to forgive others.
Not so easy.
It's not. It's very easily spoken.
Mm.
but it's very difficult to practice it. What a lot of people don't realize is that it is a daily practice. I was born in an environment that practiced no forgiveness. I heard it, whether on television, whether within my community, whether within my family structure, school structure, whatever environment I was in, I was always listening to some form of no forgiveness. So I adopted to that. But then when I discovered forgive yourself, and I think there's a Bible scripture that says forgive those. When Jesus said forgive those for they know not what they do, it's in the Lord's Prayer. I think it's the Lord's forgive those for they know not what they do. We live in a state of ignorance, so it's like once you know better, you do better. But to forgive yourself, I would say, is a great foundational start to basically healing yourself in the path and into the journey of enlightenment.
And some people may ask, Brian, I understand you're saying completely. But some people out there might say, but forgive yourself. For what? For example, because in this blame culture, it's that person's fault, it's that person's fault. And it's very difficult to point the finger at oneself and say, actually, it's me. It begins with me and it ends with me.
Yes. I think a person has to be vulnerable, willing to forgive themselves in the sense to forgive others. For we all fall in a state of ignorance that we don't know what we're doing, but we say, but they're adults. They did know what they were doing to me. They did know how they treated me. But I say to those people that it takes two to have a debate. And there's always two perspectives. There's the perspective of the other individual, of how they choose to see it. And then it's your perspective, how you choose to see it. And what I've learned, no one wants to invalidate their perspective, but they would invalidate others' perspective. So I think it's some people are just not willing to, like you said, point the finger. It's just very difficult to point the finger at oneself and say, I too played a role in it. And I too have a responsibility in this. What lesson could I be learning? And I think, it's a lack of, I wouldn't say it's a lack of light. There's a lot of light in the world, but I think in that person's world, they're not seeing the actions of a person operating in that light space. Because I always say that greatness will get mimicked. And so when I show up on the scene, I'm always looking to be the example of light, to show what forgiveness looks like, what practicing it looks like. And it's through knowledge and it's through wisdom that we have a better understanding as to why it is important to forgive oneself instead of pointing the finger. A tool that I like to share with people is to, here's a story, quick story. I was having dinner with a young lady, and she called me a narcissist in the middle of a conversation. It was something that she did not agree with, and I respected that. But when I left that conversation, I left feeling uneasy, like, oh my gosh, she called me a narcissist, and she was trying to, really make me feel bad, and I felt bad. And from that moment on, I didn't like that feeling. So I was like, let me get more spiritual knowledge. What type of tools could I use to help ease my, if somebody calls me something that I don't agree with, should I forgive her? And so what I found was that to accept is the agree to disagree rule. You may say I'm this, and I may accept it only from your perspective, but I also disagree. And here's my perspective. So I learned how to accept people's perspective of me, whether it's negative or positive, but mainly if it's negative. I accept people's perspective. But I also, if I disagree, then I'll place my perspective as to bring balance.
I use that all the time. Let's agree to disagree. I think it's a wonderful line, and it resolved many an arguments for me. And some people don't want to, though. They don't want to agree to disagree. But my final word on it is I'm not arguing about it. We're just going to agree to disagree. You have your opinion and I have my opinion. But one thing that I learned, Brian, and I don't know what you feel about this, but I've had many of these moments where, you talk to yourself, you allow your heart and your soul to speak. And I remember a few months ago, and it's always happening, as it does in life, that I was very, very hurt by somebody. And I heard this voice, and my heart said to me, "Why are you hurt?" And I remember saying, well, the way that they treated me, and I've always done my best, and they've had absolutely no care about what they've said to me. And my heart was very strong. And it actually said, "Forgive yourself." And I said, "What do you mean, forgive myself? I didn't do the wrong." It said, "But you did." I said, "Well, what did I do wrong?" "Because you allowed it." And that was a huge turning point for me, because I realized that so many things we allow. We can't control anybody else. The only people we can control is ourselves. But a lot of the time, when we are treated in a way that we don't like, for me anyway, I believe that we allow it. And we don't have to allow it. We should be with the people that bring us the joy that you speak about, that bring us this sense of respect, and have the courage. It doesn't matter who it is or however long you've known that person, but ultimately to respect that God-given right that you are a soul, they're a soul. If they want to be pleasant and respectful, all well and good. If they don't, then leave that table. It's not for you anymore. And to accept this perpetual change in every moment, and not cling on to memories of what once was with somebody. Because ultimately, I think what's important in what is now in this present moment.
That is beautiful. Yes, I agree. I agree. And I agree with everything that you're saying. And we are in alignment with how we handle things. And it's almost like it's the light workers, we all speak the same language.
Yeah.
I love to hear other light workers speak how I speak. I'm like, that's me. I'm like, she talks like me. Yes, you're saying everything. You took the words right out of my mouth.
And there's a recognition amongst people that are your kind of people. And by that, I mean your kind of people, not necessarily on this sort of earthly type of plane. It's a heart connection that I'm talking about. It's a soul connection where people, it doesn't matter if they're on the other side of the world or if they're on another planet. I'm pushing that to the extreme now. But you recognize people that have this resonance of the same music in a way.
Yes, yes. And I listen to the words of how people talk about themselves and how they talk about others. I practice more listening than I do talking. Because if I listen, I'll listen to a person's essence, what they stand for. Because if I just let them talk, we are creatures of habit. So if we operate in chaos, it's gonna come out. I'll hear it and I'll see it. And there's a saying that your actions speak louder than your words. So I listen and I watch your actions and I make a determination whether I let certain individuals around my space. And when I talk about unconditional love, this is where you love yourself, practicing unconditional love to yourself to a point to where you give yourself only the best experiences. Why wouldn't you? So if that means removing people from your space that bring chaos, and you deserve, if you don't want chaos, you deserve that right to hold space for no chaos in this realm that I live in, and to protect it.
100%.
Yes. And so I'm always listening, but not judging. It's just a preference. I prefer people who are open. If they're open to learning more about me, then I'll share as much information as I can. But if they're open to argument, if they're open to, I don't mind debating, but healthy debating. Debating that enlightens both parties. And so I think loving yourself practicing it helped me to basically say, no, you cannot be around my space anymore. You're not doing the work. You're not doing the light work. A lot of people don't want to do the work. They just want to live in their chaos. They want to live in their drama-filled world. They love it, or they don't know if they're coming or going. I don't judge it. I have no judgment of any kind to what they're doing. They can live their life. I can't control anyone but myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed about myself is this art of letting go. And it's such a healthy way to behave, I suppose. You know, let's put it on this sort of day-to-day life sort of language of, if they no longer bring anything to your life, and I don't mean materially, I mean understanding and this wonderful thing of following your joy. I love that, what you said. If they don't bring you to joy, then why are you with these people? Why are you actually, as you said, sharing this space? Because time is so short and time is of the essence. And especially when you've had such profound experiences like yourself, where you've had a near-death experience, where you've been through a crushing war, why would you live in any other sphere than that of love and joy?
That's the question that once I reached that, I was like, oh, life is not hard. But but hindsight looking back, when I was in a state of chaos, when I was balancing dark and light, one foot in darkness and chaos and one foot in the light, I was confused, and I was just let toxic energy around me, and thinking I needed to save people, because now I mean no harm when I say this, but I had the Jesus effect. I felt like I had to save everybody because that's what I was taught. That's the environment I came from. Save them, save them, save them. And you can't save everyone. And then that comes back to balance. Bring balance and order to your life. Use your discernment of who you let around your energy, is what I told myself. That's what Source told me. That's what the light spoke. It says, protect this energy that you have
Yeah.
cultivated.
Yeah.
You work too hard. Wisdom does not come easy. I always say wisdom does not accompany age. It just accompanies a collective of experiences.
I
But
agree with you. Yeah.
wisdom is sought. Source is not going to give anybody that cries out, just share me wisdom. But if it's not in your heart, it will not be given to you, because your heart must be tested. It must be tested. So it's like I've developed this aura around me, this light around me. And it's like, I'm not going to allow anyone to jeopardize what I've built thus far and tear down. And the light always wins anyway. So I know, why would I go back to the dark?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a very good example of this. Someone once said to me, you have to be careful who you let into your life. And the best way to do that is to have a visa system. I thought, what is she talking about? But it was a very, very profound wisdom. And she said to me, well, you have your perimeters. You know who you can let in at what degree into your life. And everyone is not the same. So you have to have a visa system. And I said, well, no, that's not fair. That's not very kind. And she reminded me, actually, it is kind, because we have to decide. We have that power to decide, who do we want in our life and who don't we want in our life. And if we don't want them, then we just don't grant them that right into our life. And people might think, well, that's a very harsh attitude to have. But actually, it's a self preservation that while you are preserving your light, you can then go out there and share that light, but to the people that want it. Because not everybody wants the light. And we must respect that also, that everyone has a choice to walk in the darkness or to walk in the light. And that's their own soul journey.
Yes, I agree. We all have free will to choose the path. Stay into darkness, walk into the light, straddle the fence, play around with it, see which one that we really prefer and what we don't prefer. And when I made that, and I think that's a beautiful analogy of using the visa system, it's you have to have checks and balances in order to assist people, other light workers, other potential light workers who are looking for the light. And if you allow the darkness, dark energy, chaotic energy to enter into your space, it could disrupt that signal, cause confusion, frustration, anger. It's hard to keep the light on if you allow the darkness to come in and overtake you. And so that's why I said I'm a warrior. I call myself a spiritual gangster, gang, a spiritual
Yes.
gang star, a
Yeah.
spiritual gang star, meaning
Yeah.
that the star, I'm shooting for the star. I have light, nothing but light.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a gangster of the light.
I
And
like that. The gangster of the light.
a gangster, I have to be a soldier. I have to be aware. My discernment needs to be on. And it happens in a nanosecond. I could feel the vibration, but I don't have to speak. A person doesn't have to speak to know that this person is of chaos. Either I could stay in this spot or I could let my light overtake them. Their darkness, not interfering with their free will, but I know the ones with the strongest light that could hold their light when darkness is around, the darkness would weaken and they would have to get up on the high frequency vibration, or they would have to leave.
Yes. Yeah. Have you noticed that, Brian, that people in your life that were in your life previously, that automatically, I think this happens for everyone, that once you are on a certain path, resonating on a certain frequency, those that are no longer, it's like a radio for people out there. It's like a radio frequency. And sometimes you hit the right frequency and you hear your favorite song. And sometimes it's all jumbled up. And it's what you said. When you let certain people into that frequency, it becomes jumbled. And it can jumble your own frequency. So as you then lift out of that and let people just fall away, doing whatever they've got to do, and you following your path, more people are falling by the wayside, I think, that you just have to move on.
Exactly. And what I've discovered was that when I showcase my light, when they come around, they get angry that I'm waking them up. They get angry because I understand that to really have a introspection of oneself, it can be scary. If you're operating in judgment, if you're operating in conditional love, if you're operating in no forgiveness of oneself, it can be very scary when you come across a light worker who awakens your spirit. Because I always say, the spirit knows truth when it hears it. So you could lie and say, "Oh, I don't want to hear it," but the spirit says, this sounds like truth. So I know that when people come around my energy, I speak truth. I speak light. I speak love. Love yourself. You can't come to me with the woe is me story. Then I'll say, love yourself. Then what lessons are you learning? And if a person doesn't want to hear it, they will just immediately dismiss themselves. Simple, because the highest frequency is light and love, unconditional love, a love that is pure, a love that doesn't have deception, a love that's not looking to be jealous or envy of your success, a love that is not in competition with you, for I am my own being. And I'm unique. Yes. I compete with no one.
It's fruitless to compete with anyone. It's an impossible task and a race that no one wins.
Exactly. And so even learning the art of competition, I was like, why am I competing against people when I was practicing competition? And I picked it up from my environment. And one thing that I learned is that the foundation of who we are as adults comes from childhood. And so competition in schools, there's a winner and there's a loser. I see the sad faces on the people who lost, feeling depleted. That competition, there's healthy competition, and then there's unhealthy competition to where you're depressed. And in that depression, you get headaches, and then headaches turn to a physical sickness. Now it's starting to affect your physical body. So the purpose of me moving to the light so quickly so that I could nip things in the bud very quickly and not feel the blunt force of the negative energy, of the profound headaches, and now turning into a physical sickness. I know this information to be true. That's why I practice the opposite. And so just having that knowledge and a toolkit of unconditional love and no judgment of myself. What am I learning? And forgiveness at every moment. I practice these things so much that they become toolkits. I just apply them in everything that I do. Love
It's
yourself.
a matter of self-awareness, though.
It's a matter of self-awareness. Yes.
In every moment, in every breath.
Moment, every way.
Mm. Mm.
So that you practice in that repetition that I learned first. The repetition speeds up the process of your cells having that muscle memory.
Yeah. Yes.
Programming the mind, programming the software, the old software that was given to us unconsciously by watching and observing our environment. And I reprogrammed the operating system consciously through repetition. It was through repetition of loving myself at every moment. At every moment. I used to love myself. I said, next week I'll love myself unconditionally. I was living I was like, how cuckoo is that? Next week I'll love myself. I'll get to it. I was like, no, start now. Unconditionally.
No, now.
And practice now.
Now is the moment.
Now is the moment. And I did it so many times to where it just became innate. Then I would have situations that would come up. I would have unconditional love show up. I would have no judgment and no judgment of any kind show up. I would have forgiveness show up. And I was like, oh, wow, this is beautiful. And it was a quicker way to download information very quickly instead of taking till I turned 70. I could low creep into wisdom. But I was like, no, I said, it'd be beautiful to have this wisdom in my 30s and 40s. I was like, oh, wow. And then when I creep into my 70s, I'm utilizing so much wisdom instead of waiting and being distracted.
Yeah. The important thing, I think, is that people think they have time. And, I'll leave this for tomorrow. I'll leave that for next week. I'll leave that for next year. And that, I think, is one of the greatest deceits of mankind, in that they think about a future that may never happen, or the past that nobody can change, and they actually miss this very moment to do exactly that, to love yourself, to forgive yourself. I'll share with you something that happened a couple of days ago, and I heard my heart, and it said to me, do you know what? After I'd been talking to a client, you know what? And I said, what? And and people say, ask your heart, because I'm always saying that to people. Ask your heart. Don't ask me, ask your heart. It has the answer. So it's a bit of a joke, sort of a delightful joke, but it's the truth. And my heart said to me, do you know what? You must be more gentle with yourself. I was shocked, Brian. And I said, what do you mean? I am gentle. I'm very gentle. I said, actually, you're not. I was absolutely flabbergasted. And I said, well, how am I not gentle? He said, well, you're rushing to finish this particular project. And why? Why are you not sitting and having some chocolate ice cream? And it was such a shock, but such a simple truth of, well, I'm not respecting myself. Because if I was, and if we were, we would find in the smallest things the greatest joys.
I totally agree. 100%. To follow your joy and excitement at every moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing like it when you meet a kindred spirit who on first instance, you know that you could walk a few thousand miles with them searching for your joy. But actually, even walking with them is an immense joy.
That is beautiful. To finding other people, because it's rare and few around here that are light workers. And when I meet another light worker, I'm like, oh, I don't have to over explain myself. Oh, I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
misunderstood.
Yeah, it's true. And what's wonderful when you meet like-minded people in that way is I always think we're all a bit strange. We're all a bit crazy. And I think that's what's so wonderful. It's because suddenly instinctively when someone, is on that, energy sort of radar as you, and you can be as weird as you like because it's just my type of weirdness, and that's what's so wonderful is to not miss an opportunity to be with those types of people that do actually bring us moments of happiness and laughter, and actually to say yes more to these meetings with these people.
Well, yes, I agree. Mimi, can I ask you one question?
Of course.
The question is, up until this point, what lessons have you learned about yourself, if you could sum it up in one sentence or two sentences?
In my life?
Yes, up until now.
Up until now, what have I learned? I have learned that I've learned many things, but I suppose the most important lessons is that ultimately we are all love. And that when you love, it's not enough just to love. And I've spoken about this before. It is actually to become love, because we are already love. It is, I suppose, the acceptance that we are so magnificent in our divine light. So that's the most important thing.
That's beautiful.
I think that is one of the most important lessons that I've learned.
And I left the question out. I mean, I didn't go into detail. It was the most important, but you caught it. And to love, yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful that we are love. We
Yes,
are made of love.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you heard of the poet and mystic Rumi?
Rumi, no, I have not.
Okay, that's something that when you have time, go and read about him, read his poetry. It's very well known all over the world now, even though I think he's a 13th century mystic or 14th century mystic, and his words are still relevant. And I went to his tomb in Konya. It's the whirling dervishes, the mystical, maybe you've heard of them, where they whirl and whirl and whirl in ecstasy until they reach a divine union. You will find it fascinating. It's extremely, I absolutely love him. And I went to his tomb, which is in Konya in Turkey. So it's one of the many places I've been that really were a calling to go there. And he is absolutely all about love. His message is about love. And I remember going there, and it's quite ornate how they've made it there. Um, and I had a whole list of questions. Spiritually, I thought, I can connect and I could, get these answers. And, I was sort of desperate to get the answers to these questions. And I remember asking one question, and then I heard this voice and it said, and the answer is love. And then I asked another question, and it was about worldly things as well as spiritual matters. And I would hear, and the voice again say, and the answer is love. And it went on for about 20 questions, and the answer is love. And then I was sort of a little bit irritated, and I said, well, how can it be the answer is love? And the voice said, to every question that ever existed, that will ever exist, the answer is love. And I still wasn't satisfied. It was, when your ego, it's a tricky thing, the ego, saying, well, no, you need to get a more, a firmer answer. We've got to live our life by this. And collecting these pearls of wisdom. And then I said, but I love, I do. I love, and I love people, and I love places, and I love things. And then it said, but do you love yourself? Well, yes. The answer wasn't so certain. And it said, it's not enough to love. You must become love. And the secret is, you are already love. And that was it.
And it brings like a movie title, The Becoming of Love.
Yes. Beautiful.
It's beautiful. The becoming, like a flower, and the seed is planted.
Oh,
it's
how
growing.
beautiful is that line?
Yeah.
You must make a movie.
The becoming of love. As each human must go, as a flower goes in a state of chaos, a flower can be deemed as ugly in its infant stages.
Yes.
Blossoming and stems here. And but when a rose is being, when it is blossoming, it doesn't look like a rose.
Very
it goes
true.
through different stages until one day it's now a rose. So it's like the seed of love, that seed of love it was created through an act of love. Now the spirit must now encompass a body to now remember the becoming now of love through chaos.
Oh. The amazing thing is that a lot of Rumi's poems and pieces of spiritual writing actually refer to the rose.
Wow, it's beautiful. I could see.
I've got to read you a poem, if you don't mind.
Yes,
it's one of my favorite ones. I get very carried away about things like this, but the becoming of love, it encapsulates the fragrance of everything, I think.
Yes.
And there is one poem that is one of my favorites, and it's by Rumi. And he says, that which God said to the rose and caused it to laugh in full-blown beauty, he said to my heart and made it 100 times more beautiful.
Wow. Beautiful. That tells me that we all have the divine in us.
Yes.
And if people believe in some sort of God creation, and it says that we are made, physical bodies are nothing but just vessels to experience the physical world. That if we were made from love, made to love, and made of love, then we must be love. So it's like
beautiful.
Getting back to the state, to the art of true loving ourselves. Because the type of love that I grew up on, that I watched, was very conditional. When I realized it, when I observed it, and it was not, and it was sometimes an unconditional, but then it would be taken back. It was that conditional love. And I remember the law of polarity. And I said to myself, I had this aha moment one day. I was like, the opposite of conditional is unconditional. Well, I've been practicing conditional love for a long time, and it hasn't gotten me anywhere, but a lot of anguish. So let me try unconditional love to myself. And so when I started doing that, loving myself instead of trying to love others, life became more pleasant, and filled with so much joy that I couldn't stop the process of loving myself. I was like, this feels awesome. Why would I not love myself? Wow, that was a weird concept. It's like I had a veil over my eyes that I could not see the other side of conditional love, which to love myself unconditionally. Unconditionally. Because how I treat myself is how I treat others. I must.
Correct.
I'm gonna pour into your cup based on how I pour into my own cup.
Mm.
So when I listen to people and they say, well, I don't think that, I think this, and I don't know about that, they have this pessimistic attitude instead of a grateful attitude, instead of being responsible, taking responsibility for their own lives, blaming other people for their actions, for their free will to choose at every moment.
Yes.
And it's that love, it's that unconditional love that sits quietly waiting. And says, but I think people feel like that place where unconditional love, that's boring. It's boring. It's boring. Who wants to walk around in unconditional love all day? And it's not boring, it's creative. I think people have a limited mindset. And I'm not speaking for everyone. I could feel that energy, the unspoken energy, when you talk about unconditionally loving yourself. Like there's a resistance to moving over to really fully just loving yourself in the most purest way. Especially the takeaway for like people who are in relationships. If somebody doesn't want to be with you, I practice having so much unconditional love to myself that if somebody woke up one morning and says, I don't want to be with you anymore, that could tear somebody's heart in pieces if they're not prepared. But I have prepared myself, and I'm not putting that out into the universe, but I had to protect myself from my heart being broken. But I realized I was operating on conditional love, that I was looking for love outside of myself. And I had an expectation that I knew that they could not meet. For that expectation was unspoken.
But even if somebody did say that they didn't want to be with you, with me, with whoever,
Mm-hmm.
however difficult that is, there is always this horizon within me that says, well, why would you want to keep someone in your life? That can be a friend, a partner, whoever. If they don't want it, then it's of no use. I would really only want to be with people that are happy to be with me. And those that are not happy to be with me, well, I wish them a good journey.
Exactly.
And that comes from respecting yourself,
Exactly.
loving yourself, and knowing that if your love is pure and is coming really from the divine for the sake of the divine, then anyone who doesn't fit into that ocean of love, it is better that they go.
I agree. I think the light that shines, that holds, that stands in their foundation of light, when darkness comes around, darkness must flee.
Yes.
And I always say that whoever has the highest frequency, the lowest frequency has a choice to jump on that train of love, to ride the coattail, and they too will become love if they stick around that individual, but only if the individual allows them to be around their energy.
Yeah.
And so I always hold a place of light, strength in my light. And it's it can be difficult sometimes, but I practice. That's where practice comes in. That's where repetition comes in. Hold it, and then using the knowledge and wisdom that your light is enough. That I always say that your greatness will get mimicked. If somebody shows up, there was an incident that my nephew, when I moved back from California back to Alabama, I was having a conversation with one of my nephews. And I would assume that he had not had the most pleasant experiences of unconditional, of love being shown to him from men, men wise. And so he made an action and he snatched something out of my hand. The old version of me says, let's draw blood. He disrespected you. You're giving all this love and light and wisdom to him. And he's disrespecting you by you're showing him something, and he disrespects you by snatching something out of your hand. And he looked at me as if, like, what you gonna do? He was 19. And I'm thinking to myself, now there's a beast that lies dormant within every soul that wants to come out and wreak havoc and cause chaos. And the beast was almost let out of the cage. It's similar, and I refer to the beast like Incredible Hulk. David Banner, he's a scientist, he's a nerd, and then something that triggers him. And then when the adrenaline gets activated for 20, 30, sometimes 10 minutes or 5 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, the adrenaline gets activated, you can cause a lot of chaos. And once it wears off, you're in regretful mode. So when I almost allowed the beast to come out and to solve it with violence with my nephew, Spirit said, well, if you do that, you know that he looks up to you and that he's seeing that, okay, if I have an experience that I don't like, solve it with violence. And either you could solve it with violence or just remove the knowledge, remove your presence from him. That will hurt him more. And that will teach him a lesson to don't take me for granted. The knowledge and love that I was sharing with him. And I think he thought it was not real. I think he thought it was fake. I don't think he's very serious. But in that moment, I was able to look at my nephew as my teacher and student, and vice versa. I said, he's my teacher, teaching me a lesson. How are you going to respond? And I responded through love. And I says, nephew, I says, well, I don't have to share anything with you. And I says, be well. And I let him know that I don't have to share anything with him, that it is a privilege. And it was within 5 minutes he realized what he had done. That his choice of snatching something out of my hand was going to take him away from the knowledge that I was sharing with him, the unconditional love, the teachings of that was going to help his life be less stressful. And that's when I knew that was a moment in time to where there was a test. Are you really operating in love? Are you still operating in chaos? But there was a split second that spirit says, nope, you hold your foundation as a spiritual gangster. The dark is always there, gonna give you a test. And you show the darkness that you have grown. You show source that you have grown, and that and you show source that you have grown through your actions and your behavior. And that was an example of just embodying love at that moment in time, to where the old version of me would have wanted blood, and I'm a man, and it's like my ego hurt, And so, but the loving side, the feminine energy inside of me says, no, compassion. Forgive him, for he knows not what he's doing. And he did not know what he was doing. He's 19. How can I expect him to have this knowledge that I have? He hasn't gone through life as much. Not saying that he cannot impart wisdom upon me, but I know that wisdom does not come easy. Knowledge just doesn't come easy. But to obtain knowledge, but to understand knowledge is to utilize it for the better good of mankind and to yourself in a positive and loving way.
Yes. And if you don't use it, the gift that God has bestowed upon you and your God-given right, it gets used against you, usually.
I agree. If you misuse it, it's a very powerful, it's like, be careful what you ask for. It's like, it's a lot of responsibility holding the torch of the light.
Yes. Yes.
Do you feel that like your responsibilities have grown greater? Like you have to be more responsible to yourself so that you can be more responsible to others, and people hold you at a high regard, and you're like, I must stand in the light. Does it make you want to the expectation of enlightenment that has been given to you? Oh, I won't say the expectation, but the enlightenment that has been given to you. Do you find yourself being a lot more responsible?
I think we're all responsible. This is the point. And I think some of us are more aware of it. And when you become aware of certain things, you can't suddenly become unaware. It's
Right.
like seeing it, and then you can't pretend to God that you haven't seen it. It doesn't work like that. You can't just pretend and, you cover your eyes and say, well, you can't see me type of thing. It
Right.
doesn't really work like that. And then there's a point in life, Brian, as you well know, where you just think, oh gosh, I've got to be really serious about this. This isn't a joke. And then you suddenly, like, I don't know whether you had that in the States, where you are a monitor or a prefect, and sort of you have to look after the other children. And
Yes.
suddenly, you think you're a VIP, or, you're royalty because, you've been given this, position. But little do you know that then you are answerable to all these things. And that's the point, I think, that we're at here, where you think, actually, I have to watch every single step that I make, because that was the deal that I signed up for before I came to Earth. And I don't know why I did that or what I was thinking, for goodness sake, but I did. And now you suddenly have to fulfill it. And then when you realize that that is the deal and that's the contract you signed, well, hard luck, really. Now you've got to live up to it. And that is not easy. And then suddenly you see other people having a whale of a time and,
Yeah,
laughing and,
yeah,
enjoying themselves. And you think, God, what happened?
right. People always say, "Why are you so serious?" I'm like, "I'm not serious." It's like, I'm like one of the funniest people in the room, and it's
But
like,
it's
no,
got
I'm
to
not.
be with the right people.
It's got to be with the right people.
Yes. And I'm grateful, um, it's very humbling for me because I think, look, if I mess up, I'm answerable for that. I'm very well aware of that whatever I do, I'm answerable. The point is, so is everybody else. But I don't know if they know that.
Exactly.
I know it.
Sleepwalkers, sleepwalkers, and people who refuse to wake up and say, "Hey, just because you woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you waking me up when you wake up is not." And I had to understand that at one point in time, I was wanting to wake everybody up around me. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna wake you up. I'm gonna wake you up, and I'm gonna share and share. This is fun to love yourself. And they're like looking at me like, "What are you doing?" And I was infringing on their free will to wake up when they wanted to wake up,
Or not wake up at all.
or don't wake up at all.
No, because when you wake somebody up, there's some very aggressive people and they can hit you over the head and say,
Exactly.
what the hell are you doing? I don't want to wake up, just get lost.
Exactly. You ever wake somebody up in the middle of their sleep, and when they don't, they're gonna fight you. They're like, "What time is it?
Absolutely.
What time is it?" It's like, "What? I don't like. I'm going back to sleep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please, please, and thank you." And it's funny. It becomes a joke. And I was like, "Oh, I see what I was doing." I was like, "Okay, they don't." And I could hear. I was like, "Okay, they don't want to be awakened. Sorry. Let me move along.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to wake you from your chaos. Sorry, but the party's
And
over
it
here with the
actually
light."
makes for peaceful living because otherwise you get bashed around.
Exactly.
You do. You do. Oh, dear.
This is beautiful. This is beautiful. I love having these talks with other light workers who get it. And it's like, "What are you guys doing over there? What are you doing?" And it's like just beautiful to hear that a portion of me is where you are in London. It's like, oh my God, it's like it's everywhere. The light is everywhere. It speaks the same language. Like no matter if he was in the Amazon, it speaks the same language. If you're in Australia, if you're in Antarctica, it speaks the same language.
It does. It does. I mean, you must have heard of Paulo Coelho.
I have not.
You haven't. Okay. So you have to try and get a book. And I know I can say to you, you have to, because you try to get a book called The Alchemist.
Oh,
And
the Alchemist. Yes, I've heard of the Alchemist, but I have not
okay,
read the Alchemist. But yes,
okay.
I've heard it. Yes.
All right. So it's not up there with sort of the literary greats, but that's sort of irrelevant because the point is it it can reach everybody and whatever level they're on in that particular time. It's very easy reading. And I'm not going to spoil it for you because it's a fantastic book in itself, especially for these times we're in now, and it's very easy to understand and people can relate to it. And one of the things that the story goes on to say, and it's a line which is similar to what you've just said, and it reminded me of that, is when you speak the language of the world, it doesn't matter whether we're speaking the same language, whether you're from Timbuktu or from the Amazon, if you're part of a tribe, it doesn't matter. The point is, and I found this wherever I go in the world, as long as you speak the language of the world, which is the language of love, everybody understands you.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's so powerful to be in the company of a bunch of light workers. Oh, the power that could be generated, the healing, it blows my mind.
It's so
Just even,
energizing, isn't it?
oh, energizing and supercharged, like plugging your phone up to be recharged, but it's like times infinity. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's like there was a cartoon, Captain Planet, when he says, "All our powers combined, we are Captain Planet." It's like with the light workers, with all the powers combined in a contained area, or just not even just in a contained area, just psychically, we can
Yeah.
communicate with each
Yeah.
other, and it's so rejuvenating. It's just like, yeah,
It's so true, because I have people comment on the episodes, and everyone's got their favorites and that. But one thing they all say is, and that's sort of unanimous, is when I hear you talk with the guests, we can actually tune in to you energetically, and it's as if there's three of us there, because I think that is the art of a good conversation, where you can actually invite people that are not even present into
yes,
that atmosphere.
yes, because their spirit knows truth when they hear it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
they're like, "That's the journey that I'm on. I can relate to that. Oh my God." Like,
yeah.
I've heard the Emerald tablets over 300 times within a
Hmm.
2 year. And I was doing a repetition and just basically embodying the book. And it talks about a little bit about what you just said. But I hear the Emerald tablets in everything that we do. But I'm going to get the book, Arumi, and hear his poetry. And I'm going to read The Alchemist. You got me wanting to read The Alchemist now. I heard it first through Will Smith,
Uh-huh.
when he was talking about how it changed his life, and it's a good book. And I said, I'll put that on my bucket list of things to read. But now, since you brought it up, in the spirit of light in which you have given or shared it with me in, oh, I'm looking forward. And now, as soon as I get off the phone, I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to go to the bookstore, and I'm going to pick up The Alchemist, and I'm going to read
Yeah,
it.
you won't be disappointed. And it is really a simple story, but it has so many wisdoms attached to it, and I'm sure you're going to love it. I've not actually met one person that hasn't loved it, that's read it, and Rumi especially. It's another level of swimming in another ocean, and I'm sure you will love that also.
I'm in love with philosophers. I'm in love with yogis that live up in the Himalayan mountains, that that practice leaving the body, that practice meditating and manifesting apples. And have you ever heard any stories close to you of any yogi stories that are profound?
Oh, I've heard stories about not just yogis. I've met, thankfully, I'm very grateful that I've met some very, very wise people, and people that have actually lived up in Sinai in Egypt, who are complete recluses, some of them, and some of them come out at certain times. And people that I've met that are totally surrounded by the desert and have the most remarkable stories to tell, and some really mystical sages that
Wow.
have changed my life profoundly,
Wow. That's
with
beautiful.
remarkable people, really, that actually you would think that you're in 1001 Arabian Nights, because that is a story. Have you read that book?
I've heard of that. I have not read that.
Right, put it on your list, um, because that is a very, very old stories, but they've been adapted into the modern age. Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, and Shehrazade, and all of this, but it's fascinating. There was actually a film about it, an American, called The 1001 Arabian Nights, and it was sort of a modern version of it. Even if you watch that, that sort of gives you an insight of, sort of old type of wisdom. And these people do exist. They are hidden mostly these days. And that is the thing, is that the teacher calls when the student is ready. That is what someone told me.
That's
And,
right.
and people such as spiritual masters who have this ability to transcend these worlds that we live in, because our soul isn't just part of this world. We are universe within universe. It's just different layers of consciousness. And these people are part of that, where they can fold time and space. And this is not something that is made up. These are stories that you can meet people like this and hear stories of people that have sat at the feet of these people, where they can actually fold time and space to the point of being completely absorbed in this present moment, in this infinite moment. And at that point, when our soul can reach that level, we can move and meet like-minded souls that we meet on another realm of reality. So
Which
they
is
exist.
beautiful. That is beautiful, and I'm always looking to up my level of enlightenment to other uh, ideas that to the average human seem impossible.
Oh, it's just the beginning.
It's just that's what I told myself. I said, this is just the beginning, I'm like, all the
Yeah.
work that I've done, I was like, up until now, it's just like a lot of work. This is only the
It's just the
beginning.
drop
It's just
in the
a
ocean.
drop. It's just a drop in the ocean to becoming love. So pure, so loving, so encompassing, so forgiving. Oh, I love it.
I
I
love
love it.
it. And I want to thank you really sincerely, Brian, from the bottom of my heart, for this absolutely beautifully energizing, uplifting, inspiring, I could go on, conversation tonight, because it's been an absolute joy.
It was a pleasure having me on your podcast. I am truly thankful, grateful, and honored that you had me on your show and that you would have me on your show. I am grateful. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you really, because we have to appreciate, I think, the point that every person meets for a bigger reason. We don't possibly know in that moment why that is, but we've all made promises to each other before we came to Earth. I'm very much a believer of soul contracts, that before we were even born onto this Earth, certain people made contracts. And it doesn't matter. Sometimes you never meet somebody on a physical level, but you meet them in dreams and you meet them on other planes of existence. And this is one of those moments, I think, where whoever is listening to this, we all have met at some point, and this is the beauty of it. And please come again. Please come again and share your wonderful insights.
Thank you. And I want to leave you with this. I love you so. I love you so. And I love you so.
Oh, ditto. But before we go, I need you to tell me, and to people out there, where can they contact you? Where can they find out about your work?
Listeners can find me on my website, Brian That's Brian, Isom, Isom, as in Mary, consulting.com. Social media platform, I'm only on one, which is Instagram. And you could follow me at Black Buddha. That's BLAKBUDD, which is door, HA9 on Instagram. Black Buddha 9 on Instagram is where you could follow me and get more insight about me.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, my greetings to you always, and lots of love and blessings to you and to the United States.
Likewise.
Take care, Brian.
Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Brian Isom. What a fantastic talk. It is absolutely wonderful to hear so many beautiful stories from all of my guests, and it's even more lovely that you all join me in this quest really to bring inspirational people together across the globe. Thank you so much for listening, as always. Until next time, enjoy your moments. Take care and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.